Thursday, July 27th, first of two town board workshops where the department heads present to the town board their budget for 2024, at least as it is as of today. And I think with Paul Adams, our finance director here, I think he could speak to the fact that by no means is this what will be the preliminary budget that is in September, nor the final budget, which I think is late October. But this is.
It's the first shot at it. We've got a ways to go yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our first up, and I don't know if is it by alphabetical? Donna, did you get assessing because it's an A, or is it because?
I don't know.
It's completely random.
But it will.
Yeah, we have assessing, it'll be followed by finance, human resources, personnel, police, parks and rec, and then we have cable TV access.
Yeah.
We had one change from the advertised schedule. Tonight was supposed to be court. The judges couldn't make it, so we plugged in cable access.
Great.
Court will be on Thursday, August 3rd.
Right. Okay, well, Donna, we lead off with
Sure
with you.
enough. Yeah, so I get to kick this off. I hope I get it right. If not, the next people will pick up and do better. For our request for the budget this year, the department heads put together the items that are below the personnel requests, so the equipment and then the general expenditures. And so I guess I can pick up at the line .20011, unless anybody wants to say anything about the .1 lines.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. You're going to see an extra large variance between 2024 and 23 on the compensation lines, because when we prepared the budget for 23, we had two unsettled union contracts, the blue collar and the white collar. So essentially, we didn't budget any COLA for 23. So 24 actually reflects double COLA, reflects COLA that would have been paid, that was paid in 23, and COLA that we expect to pay in 2024, so.
And, you know, Paul, as I expunge my mind from the mortgage industry acronyms, I'm still picking up on the government acronyms, COLA, cost of living adjustment, layman terms, your raise from year over year on your
Correct.
salary or hourly pay.
Okay, so jumping down to the computer equipment and licensing line, that is up a little bit from last year. We have a few more licenses, and we're going to be replacing two computers in our office. We have set out a schedule so that two will be replaced each year. We take those two old ones and replace the older equipment at the counter and the public facing computer out front to get those up to date. This year, during the year that we replaced it, we took out a 12-year-old computer. It wasn't going to be supported anymore, so the computers that got replaced this year replaced out the counter. Next year we'll replace two more, but the pricing on that went up a little bit, so that's part of that increase there. And we'll just keep flipping that out until we have new computers throughout the whole department. Two each year will make it so that computers will stay at about 3 or 4 years old throughout their lifetime. As you know, when you're not using modern equipment, the support to those operating systems and things are very important. The membership line is pretty much the same as last year, but with the addition of our appraiser. We're going to add her to our GRAR, which is a Greater Rochester Association of Realtors licensing, and some of our membership licensings across the state. We now have two people in some of those lines and underneath membership, so that's that increase. The deeds have been pretty consistent, and so I'm going to leave that about the same. Our computer expenses there are exactly the same, and what that is, let me find that line, 18. that is the amount that goes towards replacing the toner and our service towards our counter computer printer that's behind the counter there in our wing. Our department is responsible for that piece of equipment. So that's going to cover the toner maintenance contract that we have with Toshiba. Office supplies, turns out I overestimated a little bit last year, so I'm just bringing that down to what I think will still give us everything that we need to get the job done. Training, staff, and conferences, that line is up a little bit, again, for an additional person requiring training, and the higher level training carries a higher price tag with it. The contractual services are for a computer software engineer that is helping us with some custom software in our department right now. What we have done, starting with COVID, was we have a custom database there where we can make appointments for our more sensitive public facing people, our senior citizens, our disabled people, all the people who need to renew exemptions. Now, rather than having them come and stand at line at will as if they were going to the post office or Wegmans, we make appointments for them. So this helps manage those appointments as well as managing the processing of each of those applications. And there are several different types of applications being managed. So each year that just needs to be refreshed a little bit and data brought forward, and that's what that is for. Appraisal and legal contractual expenses is for when we are at the Supreme Court level. If there are any appraisals that we need to purchase, or outside attorney counsel or experts that need to go to Supreme Court, this is the line that would afford us that defense. Reassessments has been in the budget for a while, but as you know, as we have been trying to permanently fill positions, we haven't been able to use it. I hope to be able to utilize that later this year and going forward into 2024. So this being the 2024 budget, that will give us that revenue that we need to get the other assistance from outside companies to help us polish up some assessments. I will be giving the town board a presentation in a few months from now as to more details on what that plan is. Software maintenance contracts are things that we currently have, like ImageMate Online. If you go to the town's website and you go to the assessor's department, we have ImageMate Online, which will give you snippets of our of our data that we have on file for each property. You can look up your home and see that we have you down for a certain size home and the age of the home, how big is your garage, how many bedrooms, bathrooms you have, how much acreage do we have recorded for you. That is some specialized software that we can put that out to the public. It just puts it into some pretty easy to understand language. And behind the scenes, it helps us to do some of our assessment defense, making comparisons. What else is in that line? It's number 66. I know there's a couple other things in there. Oh, Apex, so that's also the sketching software that we have to draw our properties. Yeah. Vehicle operating and lease expense. When I was here this time last year, we were talking about leasing a vehicle, like the Department of Public Works was doing for the rest of the town hall. And we have since come to the conclusion that since we're a department of one vehicle, that maybe we don't need all the services that are built into that lease agreement. We don't need a fleet maintenance and that type of thing. It would actually be more cost affordable for us to buy a vehicle outright. And so we are looking at that plan right now, and I've budgeted for nothing on a lease of a vehicle for next year. Automobile maintenance, then, hoping to have a newer vehicle. We won't buy a brand new vehicle off the lot. We'll let somebody else enjoy that depreciation right off, but we'll get a car that has very little mileage on it, hopefully, and pick that up. I'm anticipating that there won't be too much past a couple of oil changes, and put something in there in case there's a flat tire.
Mhm.
And I believe that concludes the lines on my budget.
Thank you, Donna.
Does
Questions,
anybody
comments?
Have any comments, questions?
So regarding the vehicle operating lease expense, didn't the town enter into a lease, or was that just the DPW department? I thought that program was for the whole town, all departments, was I misunderstood?
The leasing
The
program.
vehicle leases?
Yeah.
It was my understanding that.
It's not
It's
mandatory.
not a mandatory
Okay.
program.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right.
It worked very well for that department. They
Yeah.
had several very old vehicles they need to replace all at once. Some people are aware that when you are purchasing a vehicle, you can't take out an installment loan if you are a government, so we would have to buy it outright.
right.
And so for that department that needed to replace several vehicles, a leasing option was going to be more affordable on a year-over-year basis until they started to turn things over, and that got them up and running on better vehicles more immediately.
I think we currently have about 12 vehicles under lease across all the departments through Enterprise Fleet Management.
Donna, do you anticipate purchasing a car for the department in 2024?
In 2023.
In 23, okay.
If no other questions, I will say, Donna, I know in our preliminary discussions, I'm looking very forward to, within the next couple of months, I know you're gonna put together a or workshop presentation and so the future, if you wanna call it the assessment party.
Would you like to have a party, Mr. Supervisor?
Oh, my goodness, I'll tell you.
That probably won't be
It's
a
only
party.
4:30.
It will be fun, I'll tell you that.
The assessment department and the revaluation that you are working with the state powers that be, it is extremely impressive, and I'll just leave it at that, because I know that you'll put together that presentation, it'll be great.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to bring that presentation to you just as soon as I have in writing the support of the state for it. It's a little bit different idea from the standard revaluation program that is out there now. It's been a long time, and by the time we really get underway, it'll be, give or take 20 years since the town of Webster has done a revaluation, and we just don't want to double people's assessment overnight.
Right.
We are currently, our most recent assessment roll is at 58%. So in order to get assessments up to 100, we would have to double them, and that just sounds like a very frightening thing. So what I'm trying to do is put together a plan that would address that, as well as bring the assessments up to speed. But since I'm going a little bit outside of the standard what a town would do for a revaluation, because most towns are closer to 100 when they do the revaluation, and we're nowhere near 100%, I want to make sure that we would have the support of the staff and that I am meeting their expectations in the plan that I have engineered for you.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things of this is gonna be the engagement of the community. So we
Absolutely.
can avoid what some of the other towns have gone through, because it is a very misunderstood thing. And someone hears, oh my God, my assessment's going up double, you're gonna jump to the conclusion your taxes are going up double, and that's not the case.
That won't be
Not
the
even
case.
close to being the case.
Right, and it will not,
So-
we will not double them in 1 year. It'll take a series of years to get there, just to make it more understandable.
Yep.
Yep, and to give us the time to do it well. So when you look at one of these lines here with the software licensing fees, that's somebody else's now. But when you're looking at the software licensing fees that I have there, or one of the computer expenses on the IMO that I mentioned, I'm going to be purchasing in 2024 a new plug-in version so that people from home, and it has to be set up, but it's in the budget,
Sure.
so let me figure out how to get it deployed, and we'll do an advertisement on that. I would like people to look at the assessment records that we have on file and let us know if we have something wrong. Let's get the data right before we start putting out the values, and there's going to be a feedback page on there where homeowners can sit at home or in the library and look at the information that we have on file for them and
Sure.
let us know if there's any corrections that need to be made. So that's part of that budget as well.
When we get the workshop, by the end of the year, we'll start the process of educating
Yeah, so,
board and citizens.
exactly.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Donna.
Thank you.
Okay, next up this afternoon is
Finance.
Paul Adams, the Finance
The
Department.
Finance Department. First section you have here is compensation, which year to year is actually down $28,000, and I'll explain why. I currently have 4 staff members, Paula Friedman, Kelsey Feeney, Kim Hendy, and Tracy Rinker. And Paula has decided to retire. She'll actually be formally retiring in about 2 weeks, but she'd still like to work, so she's going to come back part-time. So I've actually shifted a portion of her wages to part-time. So we think we've gained some capacity over the last few years. I think we have gained efficiencies with software. Kim Hendy's contributed quite a bit to that. She's importing journal entries, so it saves man-hours. So we think there's enough capacity so that we can actually reduce by about a half a person and still make things work. So we're going to give it a shot, and it looks like it'll save the town about $28,000. Furniture and equipment, that's just for minor purchases that may be capitalized. Computer equipment and leasing, $4,370. Those are license fees that are passed on to us. Microsoft license fees, Adobe, a few other ones that Steve passed on to us. In prior years, it actually was included in the IT budget, but we now have distributed those costs out to the various departments. Seminars and conferences, $5,500 for the year. It's up slightly from 2023. It includes things like the GFOA conference, Association of Towns. There's a PERMA conference I go to, and I've actually built in some additional monies for the staff, because the staff like to attend some training as well, and I think it's smart to keep them educated, and it's always good to get with your peers and share ideas. So that's up $1,300 year to year. The financial software tools, that includes software that we used for fixed assets inventory. We had been on an old, outdated program, so actually this year we had an Access database built for fixed assets, and it's working pretty well. So I built in some money for maintenance there, I think about $1,300. And it also includes a software called Lease Crunch. We have to comply with GASB 87. GASB stands for Government Accounting Standards Board. They set the standards for accounting for all governments. And beginning last year, we had to account for leases and calculate the present value of each lease. And there's a series of journal entries that have to be booked at the end of the year for those leases. So there's a software tool there which costs about $3,000 a year, which helps us with that endeavor. Under financial consultants, I've got that flat year to year. That includes things like Municipal Solutions. It also has Lifetime Benefit Services within there, which handle our HSA and HRA accounts. So there's a fee for that. Office supplies, it's been trending up slightly, so I raised it about $800 year to year, so we're at about $5,900. Machine lease, are the copier lease. We have a it's actually a printer copier. We lease through Xerox. We pay a small monthly fee, and we pay per copy. Under software license fees, $74,000. This is paid to Tyler Technology. They actually host our financial software system, which includes everything from payroll to accounts payable to general accounting. We decided last year to actually move it to their hosted system. It formerly had been on our servers, and so far it's working well. Computer system maintenance is the annual fee that we pay to Munis. That is for support for the software. That's about $7,500 a year. There's some small bank admin fees. director out-of-pocket expenses is things like mileage. And I also have some software conversion costs. I did budget $3,000. That's for continued training on the Munis software product, which is through Tyler. We do have things come up from time to time, and I think it's smart to continue training and to maximize the efficiency of the software. And the other piece of my budget are the fees which are paid to our independent auditors, our CPA firm. We use Magel, Metzger, and Barr. We've been with them for a number of years. They do an independent financial audit. They do agreed-upon procedure engagements for the town clerk and for the justice court system. And last year, they were required to do a single audit, which is a special audit that you're required to have for federal monies, which basically entails the ARPA funds they would receive from the federal government. So since we spent over the $750,000 threshold, we had to have a single audit. So year to year, those costs are up slightly. We expect to pay about $38,500 for those 4 engagements in 2024. And that is the most of it. So year to year, we're actually down year to year, mainly due to the reduction in salaries. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Paul.
I don't have any, thank you.
Okay,
Paul.
you're welcome. All right, next
Well, I
up, we
don't want to
have,
get us behind,
Brayton.
but I'm gonna ask one question.
Sure.
There is a line item there for those that are watching at home that you didn't go over, and it's a transfer from the sewer fund over that actually reduces your budget by 60,000.
That's correct.
I think this transfer permeates into some of the other departments too, and I know a couple years ago in aggregate, the sewer department was tithing, I'll call it, transferring over to town departments in aggregate of $250,000.
Right, I think it was 255.
Right. And the concept behind that is that the sewer fund, the sewer department, is almost like a pseudo enterprise fund, or utility. It's pseudo, it's not, we have not set it up as a utility over the years. But if at $250,000 a year, over 30 years, it's probably, I don't know if it was $250,000 back in 1990. But that's $7.5 million that really was able to be utilized from the sewer department to come over and offset the departments. And the rationale is that the sewer department needs to use the finance department to send out bills.
Yeah.
And stuff.
And
Right.
insurance costs, things like that. We
Right.
also offset a portion of
Yeah.
insurance.
And I think, my speculation has been, doing my research, is that one of the attractions to maybe leadership back in the 90s in Webster to not get rid of the sewer plant when 30 other towns and villages and municipalities did and go to the county is that this is a cash cow. This is great. We're making money. We can use it as a tool to leverage and this and that. And I get it. I've been in business, but as we'll talk about later tonight, that cash cow gets milked clean, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then you gotta rebuild the sewer plant.
Yes, we do.
So I don't really know if that was a question as much as it was a comment.
It was a comment.
Okay,
It's a line on my budget, so I'm glad you brought it up.
all right.
And by the way, that transfer is now down to about $155,000 a year.
Yes.
So we have reduced it by about 100,000
Yeah, I know that over the
Overall.
last couple of years.
last few years.
The leadership of the sewer department has really been honest about, can you explain why $250,000 is coming out of my fund? I
Mhm.
think we just explained why it was.
Yeah,
So, anyway, thank you, Paul.
you're welcome.
All right, next up tonight, and we're a little bit ahead, which is good, because I think Brayton Connard and personnel/human resources is kind of running a little double duty tonight, aren't you, Brayton? Which you'll explain, so you might need the extra 7 minutes.
Councilman Cahill, I think I can do it in 15 total.
You got 10.
Okay. All right, so the 2024 requested budget from the Department of Human Resources is 2% lower than the authorized 2023 budget. It's essentially a maintenance of effort budget, and the most significant reduction is the removing of the budgeting of a part-time employee. We are leanly budgeted at one human resources professional for an organization this size, but given the advancements in technology, Paul was talking about Tyler Tech, and we're constantly working on efficiencies there, as well as the partnership with the payroll manager. I'm quite confident that the town can continue to operate well and in compliance without the need for the part-time employee. So that's why that's not going to be in this year's budget request, and I wouldn't expect it to be back anytime soon. Most of the line items are pretty identical. There is a $500 increase in employee wellness, and that is because we have a revitalized wellness committee. Jay Verna out of Parks and Recreation Department leads that and does a fantastic job, and he's recruited active participants from each of the departments, and they've got some plans for enhanced activities, and so we put a little bit of extra money in there. Additionally, that money is supplemented by a grant that we receive annually from FLIMHIT that helps with that. And the other expense that I would say is increasing is the line for legal counsel. And, I guess I would just call that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And there are some things that it's good to run by a specialist in labor and employment law as opposed to a general counsel. So that's in there as well. So that is my update on human resources. And I can go into communications after you have an opportunity to ask any questions.
Well done, Braden.
All right. So, moving on to the communications department, Paul will get that budget line up there. You can see the communications department has salary for a director and then a total of $2,500 for expenses. This is the first year that we will be having a communications department, so the level of expenses are unknown, but we don't anticipate much overhead at all, for the operation. The new department will be responsible for the strategic and comprehensive communication needs of the town of Webster, including all internal and external communications and public relations efforts. There is no net increase in headcount for the town because there was already in the 2023 budget a full-time position that is now being transferred to the communications department. So this new department is not increasing the number of employees at all. It's going to be pay group 24 on the new pay group classification scales. So Civil Service has selected the title of Coordinating Director of Communications for the position. There is a Civil Service list in place for the position from an examination that was given last fall. That's one of the reasons why the recruitment has taken a while, is we had to wait for exam results. We are actively canvassing for the position, and we'll see who's interested in applying. And then that candidate will be subject to the same rigorous structured interview process that we've used successfully with department head positions over the last 3 years. There is a search committee that's been established and had its first meeting. It includes a outside subject matter expert, a retired member of the local media, and we are currently in the process of a needs assessment with our department heads and with the town board so that we know what is the prime focus we should be looking for in candidates, as well as, kind of what should be the top priorities for the new department head. With that, I'm available for questions. How'd I do on time? That's the shortest I've ever been
It's not
here.
even to 5 o'clock yet. Thank you.
All right.
Jenny, John, Patty, anybody?
No, thank you, Braden.
Thank you, Braden.
Thank
I would
you.
just, well, he's gone, so I guess that's that. So, no, we're good. We're good.
We're ahead of schedule. Police Department is next.
All right, Chief Colmeyer.
Yes, sir.
I don't think just because we're 15 minutes ahead of schedule that we're going to have you go 30 minutes, but we'll see how this goes.
I will try not to. I learned my first year not to be late and to be early because I missed the early window. All right, so overall for the 2024 budget, it's a concept of trying to improve efficiencies and restructure the organization, incorporate technology, and help leverage what's available to us to be more efficient and deliver better service. So starting at the top, obviously my salary line is independent from the other officers there. That's without the 30% retirement contribution on the backside, because I'm already a retired member. Officer salaries, that is budgeting for 34 officers. It's been a consistent hiring process to try to obtain that number of 34. We currently still have 2 openings, with 1 person in the academy and 1 person on FTO. So the projected goal in 2024 is to be at 34 by the time we get there, by hiring by the end of the year. Turnover is a continual process. On average, I'd say we lose about 3 officers a year to transfers, retirements, or moving on to other professional occupations. So that moves us to the next budget line for the compensation for retirements. Currently, we have 2 eligible members to retire. We've seen historically with law enforcement, officers typically don't stay more than a year or 2 beyond their retirement eligibility. So when we have 2 eligible, typically we'll see at least one or 2 of those get exercised within a year or 2. The non-comp holiday pay is kind of a fluid number, so we decreased it in 24 from 23 just because it didn't get used as much, or we don't project it to be used as much. Officers have the option of taking holiday pay and comp or pay within the pay period. So if they take it within the pay period, it comes out of that line. If they take it into their comp bank, then it'll either be used for time off or paid out at the end of the year through a different line we'll get to in a second here. The police overtime line, I increased this year. I think as we get closer to the end of the year, we'll have a better idea whether we can make some adjustments to that if necessary. As we've seen reduced operational staffing, we've seen an increase in overtime need, covering shifts. Like I said, the current situation right now is we're down 4 police officers operationally from our authorized staffing. The overtime is actually broken out into a couple different categories there if it's reimbursed. So the DWI overtime is grant reimbursed. The comp buyout was what I referred to a minute ago. When officers work overtime, they have the option of taking in pay or compensatory time or their holidays and comp. At the end of the year, we have a mandated process where we buy it down to 80 hours, but the officers have an option of buying it down further. So that would come out of that line. And if you look at budgets over the previous couple of years, those numbers weren't separated out. So one of the goals fiscally has been to kind of better identify where the costs are coming from, and we created that line, I believe at the beginning of last year in order to help separate out some of those expenses. The reimbursable police compensation, that was a new line in 23 we created in anticipation of having a higher request for officers to work public events that would be reimbursed, but we haven't seen really a big impact with that. So we've reduced that number down to be more manageable based on expectations for 24. The clerical salaries is for our existing 3 full-time clerical staff, and then a request for 1 additional administrative person. We have seen a increased workload on the administrative staff because of the discovery process that was implemented by New York State a couple years ago. That has had a big impact on us and our success rate. We have to get documents processed and moved to the district attorney's office within specified timeframes in order to be disclosed to defense counsel, and if we don't meet those expectations, cases get dismissed. So those are increased importance on the administrative function of the police department as well. Sorry. Clerical overtime is minimal. That's based on meetings or emergency situations. Part-time employee wages, that is for one part-time fleet maintenance person, that's to maintain that position. Next couple lines are pretty consistent across the years. Overtime for school resource officers, that is completely reimbursed by the Webster Central School District, so that number is put in there in anticipation of when the officers get used. But anything above or below that is reimbursed on the revenue side from the school district. So that includes SRO overtime, and it also includes when the school district asks for additional officers at events to help with traffic. For those that have been to some of the bigger football games or the graduation, you'll see 3 or 4 or 5 Webster police officers out there. All those officers are being reimbursed by the school district for the duties there.
Yeah, we bill them twice a year. It's basically for the period September through June.
So then, as the finance director mentioned before, computer equipment and licensing, that's a new approach for the town, moving it to a cost center approach for each department. So that incorporates our licensing, replacement of computer hardware, and we're making a request to have an increase there to cover some additional software licensing, plus moving some of our administrative function to a more mobile work environment. Our investigators particularly, giving them devices that they can work on and upgrading their workflow so that it's not tied to a office. Capital purchase, most of those items are consistent across the fiscal years without too much impact. The firearms purchasing, we made an additional request to upgrade the optics on the pistols. The technology's been there for a few years. We wanted to get, I guess, tested out in the law enforcement environment before we made a request to adopt that technology. But that's one of our requests for next year, is to move that line up to incorporate that into the weapon system. The vehicles, we're budgeting an additional cost. Basically, we're on a 5-year rotation with our fleet. We see about 3 patrol cars a year to maintain a healthy fleet that's between marked and unmarked vehicles. So that request is for 3 SUVs for next year, which obviously had a market impact for the additional cost. Professional development, that is conferences, that is primarily for the International Chiefs Conference in order to get continuing education. Next expense that kind of had an increase that's significant is the cellular telephones. One of the concerns that we've had with our work process is that the officers are using personal devices when they're working, and that has some impact on the new discovery laws and potential exposure for the employee in the town. It actually comes at a good time with the increased cost of the new provider for our telephone system. We were able to get rid of all of the voicemail costs that were associated with the officers under a different line item, so that we can move it to the mobile devices that they'll be issued moving forward. So again, it's part of the overall concept of moving the workforce to a more technology-oriented mobile work environment, making them more efficient. Service contracts. So the increase in service contracts, so there's 2 large expenses in there. One of them is the body-worn camera software. So that's about $15,000 a year, goes to our body worn camera. We were recently notified that New York State's giving us a $40,000 grant for body worn cameras that we can use retroactively for the cost that we incurred to implement the body worn cameras. So it was about $15,000 in 2021 for the equipment, another $15,000 for the licensing, and we're in a 5-year contract for the licensing. So the $40,000 helps us recover some of the costs that we underwent to purchase those. And the initial year of those purchases was also done through drug asset seizure money. So it wasn't out of tax dollars, it was out of seizure funds from law enforcement investigations. The other additional expense that's new this year is the Lexipol policy software. As we transition to a new policy manual that is, I guess the word I want to use is that it's vetted. It's updates are provided. It stays and helps us maintain consistency with the laws and mandates that are being pushed out at a very rapid rate, especially at the state level. We were recently informed, our Human Resources Director found an opportunity to potentially save us 30% of that cost annually through a PERMA grant that we're currently working on. So we may be able to reduce that line item once we get confirmation that that's going to be awarded to us. Telephone expense, again, is a new provider, so the expense has gone up a little bit. It would have gone up more significantly, but we reduced the voicemail impact. It used to be we were charged a discount rate for voicemail for the officers because they didn't use actual handsets or telephones, but the new provider didn't have that discount, so it would have been the entire licensing fee for each employee just to maintain a voicemail for them. One of the, I guess, the 3 remaining large impacts to us are vehicle repairs. Again, part of maintaining a healthy fleet will help reduce that overall cost, but we also have the impacts of just general wear and tear on the patrol vehicles depending on the environments they're being operated in. Fuel cost, again, we're budgeting a little bit of an increase just on the expectation of inflation. And clothing expense has been a consistent cost for us based on the 5-year replacement cycle of ballistic vests for each officer. That's an industry standard. And then the expensive uniforms and equipment that keeps increasing. Under revenue, the most significant impact, I mean, obviously, we're not a revenue-generating entity for the town, typically speaking. That revenue line is primarily the school district reimbursement for our 2 school resource officers. The school district reimburses about 75%, not about 75% of the total cost of the officer, both salary and back-end costs. So the rest of the revenue is fairly minimal considering the total budget line. Any questions on the law enforcement side, or you want me to jump right into the animal control budget as well?
Well, you just answered my question because I was hoping you would do animal control.
Ready to go.
Yep.
So for those who don't know, our animal control unit doesn't consist of a full-time member. It is part-time personnel that both do the administrative function and the on-call. We've had a continual recruitment process for that. So this is, I guess, my plug to the community. Anybody wants to help with the animal control process, we're taking applications and for people on call to help with contained dogs. The main animal control officer lead, I would say, is a part-time position, and then we have part-time assistants to help with both the administrative functioning and the on-call. Everything else is pretty much just maintenance of the position and function. And some of them are fluctuating depending on the number of dogs that we deal with primarily. Sometimes there's cats, but primarily we're dealing with uncontained dogs, reunification with the owners, and then the boarding and health costs of maintaining them, especially if they don't get claimed. And that's that.
Well, it's one of our bigger departments, so any questions, comments from the town board members?
Do that.
Okay. Anything down here, Jenny or John?
No.
Okay. Similar to assessment, before the end of the year, Chief, I want to work with you. We'll have a workshop or whatever. I mean, I guess the elephant in the room, in the whole community about, policing and the things that are going on and the different crimes and property crimes and car thefts and all that. And it's affecting more than Webster. It's affecting the whole upstate area. So we get a lot of calls and inquiries, as do you, and about this. In fact, State's Assemblyman Brian Mangtelo, I think, reached out to both of us on Tuesday saying he got a call from some constituents in Webster that are very concerned about all this and are asking, what are we doing about it? So it's on everybody's mind, and I think it's going to be important for us to put something together that kind of separates, fact from fiction. So I'll work with you on that. It's a non-budget issue, but maybe it is.
Yeah, so
know?
I'm glad you brought it up, because there's two things I wanted to hit on that I didn't get in my notes. One being that the officer salary line is without contractual raises in it. So it's a negotiation year for the Police 1000 Club, which represents all the sworn members of the police department, from lieutenant down. So the contract costs are dependent on negotiations that are going to take place between now and the end of the year. So that wasn't included in that. But to your point about some of the things that we're trying to do internally to address, so for those that aren't aware, our most significant issue is property crime. I mean, obviously, there's other types of crime that happen in town, but our biggest resource draw is property crime, whether it's retail theft, or the recent issue that we've seen with stolen vehicles, and theft from private property. But resource alignment is one of the things that we're focused on, trying to make sure that we're using the resources we have efficiently. We're having internal conversations about trying to identify shift structures and things that can help maximize our impact and get our officers on the road at the times where we need them. So retail theft pretty much is a 9 to 9 type of problem that we're dealing with. Larceny in progress versus reports has a significant impact on us. The increase in larcenies in progress for 2022 was significant over the 10-year average prior to that. And I'll have some of those statistics put out publicly here by next week as to what some of that impact has been for us. But resource alignment and being efficient is, with our processes, what we're focusing on right now.
I just want to say, as liaison to the police department, I've seen some of those statistics that you've shared with us at a couple of meetings, and I really appreciate the work that you've put into gathering all of that information and putting it out so that you can look at operating more efficiently and protecting the community's safety as well. So I really appreciate that you're taking a look at that proactively.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow. Get a nice break, aren't we, between now and
Next up is
public
Parks and
hearing.
Recreation.
All right. Well, Katie
Hello, Chris.
Kovar and Chris Bilo, I take it that Glenn Morrell is trusting you to talk about parks tonight, right?
Well, actually, I had Katie kind of on standby as I await my first grandson here any day. So she was waiting in the wings, so I said, might as well go through the whole process anyways. So a couple of things before I actually get into it, and I'm not going to go line by line for you, but the 2024 budget does not include any additional full-time staff or any major or significant changes to the current department structure. Obviously, the department, I feel, does an excellent job of providing programs and services to the community which as we go through '23, I'd always give a little bit of plug before I get into '24 figures. Where we're currently at after the 7-month mark, our expenses are right around 53% for the department. So we're actually doing well on the expense side, and our revenue collection is currently at 88% of revenue. So our budget for '23 should be pretty healthy, and some of that is reflected in '24, some of the revenue lines. So I'll get started. First, 6772, which is Program for the Aging. It's our 55-plus program. No major changes to the overall expenses. The only significant or major change here would be to the 2000 line, which is capital purchases. It's that request is for some improvements to the senior lounge, some of that furniture and some of the amenities in there is time to be replaced. So we budgeted for $1,500 just to do some minor changes in that room. From a revenue standpoint, again, very, very simple, really only 3 lines in there. Slightly up as we do see an increase in the senior recreation, which is our program. That's not the lunch program, that's our actual program activities for our seniors. We're seeing a increase in that, so we budgeted accordingly. So overall, our revenue for that department's up by about $11,000. Okay. Anything you need to add? We good? Okay. From a recreation standpoint, again, I'm not going to go through each one of these lines. Several of these lines I'll go through, or some of these lines I'll go through that have some changes. Obviously, these first, .1 lines are all salary lines. The 10087 administrative support staff line, that has an increase. That's basically as a result of, as we budget for the increase in minimum wage, really no change to our current staff structure. That's really what supports our building. The building is staffed 7 days a week for about 104 hours per week. So that does have an impact as we look at the minimum wage. 10097, that's our seasonal personnel line. That increase, again, minimum wage, continues to drive those costs up. Additionally, we also have now a second summer day camp site that we provide services for, so that obviously increases the number of staff that we hire on a seasonal basis. And actually, once the budget is adopted, wherever this figure ends up, one of the suggestions that we're going to look to try to do is we're going to break out of that seasonal line. We're actually going to try to create that into 2 payroll lines, or 2 payroll accounts, one for our summer camp and then one for the rest of our seasonal lines. That'll help really with determining our costs as we provide that summer camp program, which is obviously a major factor on, in that line. Out of that 125,000, close to 100 of it is specifically for our summer camp program. So we're going to look to try to break that out so we can track it a little bit closer as we go through the year. As you go through 20011, the computer licensing, that's slightly up, again, as others have shared tonight. That's for covering all of the workstations that we have, which is for 10 full-time and a part-time computer in the license. And then we also have budgeted for a replacement of a laptop for the department. 4056, general repairs, slightly up. The reason for that increase is, as I'll get into revenue here in a few minutes, we've run into, in this past year, about a $5,000 to $6,000 increase in what we have to purchase for membership cards for our facility. That's a good thing that we have this problem because we have more members now in the building, but that's a cost that used to be able to be incurred about once every 2 years. Now we're having to do it on an annual basis. And unfortunately, those cards we can only get them from one place so that they work with our registration and our security system. Computer tech support, that $19,000 is for the Vermont system, which is the cloud-based, which hosts our registration software, RecTrack. We put this in last year, and all I can tell you is that by having that based on the cloud, it has improved efficiency in the system. We're no longer seeing downtime for having to do updates. That's all done automatically. And I know our IT department appreciates the fact that no longer do they have to manage those type of updates or changes. So that's been a very nice change for the department. 40227 day trips, that has a slight increase. And again, what we're going to be doing is once this budget is finalized, that day trips is actually specific to our summer camp program. So what we did was we rolled supplies for our summer camp program into that. So we took it out of our rec supply line and we moved it into this. So this will actually looked to be renamed as a summer camp expense line, since everything that's in there is specific to our summer camp program. So that would cover things as supplies, items that they need for camp, along with buses and entry into wherever their field trip may be for that trip. Regards to some of the other items down towards the bottom, we're starting to see, as everybody is, utilities between natural gas and electric especially, an increase. So we've budgeted accordingly. Water seems to be pretty typical. Our biggest use for water outside of the building is obviously our spray parks. Okay, from a revenue side, 2003, that's our program line. We've increased that by 20,000, so it's up to 300. And just as a note, this budget line is increased about $75,000 since 2019. And that's all is a matter of the staff and their efforts in running quality programs and the number of programs. So that's we're continuing to see that line have significant increases. 2011, which is our silver revenue, this continues to increase. We're budgeting for about a 22% increase in 2024. We're seeing monthly return in our silver revenue at a pace that we haven't seen yet. So we track that on a monthly basis, and the revenue that's coming back from our silver revenue is significant, and I think we'll see that continue to increase in 2024. 2035 is fitness classes. I will just bring this up as to why this looks the way it does. In 23, we had a budget of 70 and we dropped it by 50,000 for 24. However, if you look at the next line, fitness membership, there's a $50,000 increase. So basically what we did is we moved it from one line to the other. And the reason that we did that is in fitness memberships in the past, when we do our installment billings, a portion of that would be pulled out and go into the fitness class line, which basically covers the premier memberships. So those people that have a premier membership, it was being pulled out and put into the fitness class line. Well, it really didn't give us a good indicator of what our fitness membership was. So we've decided to leave the premier memberships in the fitness membership so we have a good indicator of actually what we're bringing in revenue-wise on a month-to-month and year basis in regards to dollars. So we've left that in, and what fitness classes will now constitute from a revenue standpoint are for people that come in that may not be a member, that will pay a drop-in fee, pay a building use fee, strength training, any kind of those drop-in programs, that revenue will now go into that fitness class line. So that's why we reduced it as such.
It's smart to isolate that.
Exactly. It kind of clouded it when you looked at some of the numbers. It wasn't really a clear picture, especially on the fitness membership side. So, and then obviously those last two lines are the reimbursed from the county. The one note that I did have that I didn't make on my notes here was in 2023 when I did this presentation. We were talking about memberships. We were at an installment billing on a monthly basis. We were at 370. When we ran our last monthly installment billing, we're at 473. So we're up over 100 members per month since last year.
That's big.
Parks, I'll do my best for Glenn here. Really, again, same kind of concept from an expense standpoint. This first view, I will say that 10102, the part-time park maintenance line, that does have an increase, and the reason for that is not only for taking into account wage increases, but it also does include a request to have a 20 to 25-hour a week part-time facilities person to be able to assist with the facility needs around town. As you know, we instituted a facilities staff person a few years ago, and that person has been managing a number of different facility issues around town, whether it's from fixing items or working with contractors, helping manage some of the various items that happen around town, like HVAC issues, those kind of things. So we've been doing that with one person. One of the recommendations when we started that process was that this would sort of be a phase-in approach. So this is our next request, to be able to have somebody, again, from a part-time standpoint, be able to assist with some of the smaller tasks, things like the painting of, doors, the exterior doors on the courthouse, those kind of things that needed to be done, but it's difficult sometimes when the facilities person is spending a day with the HVAC contractor troubleshooting issues at Town Hall. So that's the request for that. 20011 is computer licensing. This is for the three computers that we have within our Parks Department. 20059 is our capital improvement line, and we have in there $25,000. That's up from last year. That $25,000 is specific for one project. As you know, this year, and we're in the process of wrapping up, the improvements to our tennis/pickleball courts outdoors at First Responders. So this $25,000 is to do a new driveway and parking lot at that location. If you've driven back there in the last year, you could lose a filling in some of the potholes that are in there. We do our best to be able to, make do and fill where we can, but this would sort of complete that project next year. So the request is slightly higher than what we had for '23. 20064 is our capital purchase park improvement. That's the $20,000. That's the annual $20,000 that allows us to do various projects within all of the parks. Most specifically, the funds were used to help be able to upgrade and change the signage at all of our town parks to have a consistent look. And so that's one of the type of projects. One of the areas that we're looking to use some of this funds for is to change out all of our kitchen apparatus at the two lodges, replacing those with commercial grade refrigerators and stoves, et cetera, because of the use that they take. I didn't talk about the capital purchase, sorry, go back to 20063, capital purchase equipment. That's for $20,000, it's slightly down. We've been fortunate with the town board's assistance the last few years to really improve the equipment that the park staff have at their disposal. So this year, there's not quite as much of an ask. A few of those things actually relate specifically to the buildings. We're looking to replace a floor machine, the Viper machine that is used on a daily basis throughout the rec center. Looking to purchase a gym floor protector so that when we have events in the gymnasium, we have something that if we feel may do some damage or have some issue with our gym floor, we've got a way to be able to protect that. And then we also put in for replacement of one of our softball fences at the rec center at Chiota. We're looking to replace those. We have 3, obviously, with A, B, and C. We're looking to replace those 1 a year. Now I'll jump down to 40101. That's our vehicle lease. That jumps significantly, as you see. Last year we had 1 vehicle, and that was our facilities van, which I'm not sure if people have seen around town, but that was a must-need or a must-have last year. So obviously that lease continues, and then this year we're looking to, we have 2 vehicles, 2 park trucks that need to be worked out of service. One is a 2013 and one is a 2016. And one of those is a plow truck, so this includes a retrofit or a outfit of that vehicle for a full plow. So there is one time, this is part of the enterprise fleet program, and we do have a one-time cost to be able to outfit that vehicle. Then we won't incur that cost on a monthly after the first year. So we'll in total have 3 vehicles as part of the fleet program in 2024. 40166, fuel market increase. Again, as everybody has seen, I know the police just talked about it. We're seeing that across the board. The 40211, that was a 0 to a 2,500. Just real quick, that is an ask and a request for some funds that we can use. So Friends of Webster Trails, as they're doing various projects, tasks around town on town property, if they have something that we're able to support them with, we have some funds available to it. Right now, we've sort of, just sort of figured where we could pull those funds from. But if we have the ability to create an expense line to be able to support some of those projects, helps us as well as it helps Friends of Webster Trails. And obviously, everything that they do is so important to what we have in all of our park systems. And then the last one on there that I'll just talk about real quick is 40248, lawn service. I put 120 in there, so it is a slight increase. Our contract with our current lawn service is up this year. So we are actually, we are working on getting the bid package put together now. Our plan is to go out to bid with that sometime in early fall. We're hoping by the early October, we can have that out to bid, so we can have that back by November. So that'll really give us an idea, but based on what we're seeing from some of the other municipalities, specifically Penfield, who also contracts out their lawn service, we figured this is probably a similar jump of where we might need to be. Hopefully, it comes back a little lower. We're going to get and look to do a 3-year bid, as that seemed to really benefit the town, as we saw some significant cost savings the last 3 years with that, so.
Hard to believe it's been 3 years.
It is, it's crazy.
So there's no option to extend that?
There's not.
Yeah, okay.
And I can understand because
maybe
they
it'll
went
work out
3
better.
years, they went 3 years, if it's a 1 year, maybe, but they went 3 years, and it'll be time for them to,
Yeah, reevaluate.
yeah. Then from a revenue standpoint, I do have the park lodges slightly up to 110,000. And then the other thing that is here, I don't think you have on here, Paul, is the sale of those 2 trucks that we are sending out for parks.
Correct.
So
We did not include any anticipated sales revenue, but there will be something we could add in, but
Yep, so,
it's an uncertain amount, so we chose to leave it out.
and that's it. Katie?
No, just the changes that Chris is, proposing for the different budget lines really will help from a management perspective to kind of keep things clear for both Glenn, myself, and our staff. So we anticipate a great 2024 as we end 2023.
Questions?
I had just one question. It goes back to the recreation, and you talked about the increase in fitness memberships. I would hope that we've seen an increase since the pandemic where people were not participating in memberships. Do you have any idea where we are, such as those numbers pre-COVID?
I believe we evaluated them a couple months ago, and we're right at 2019 numbers, I believe, yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
so we've
Yeah.
come back.
We have.
Made it back.
Fantastic.
It took a bit, but we did it.
Yes.
I think actually when we had our initial budget meeting with, I showed a graph to that, in that group, that showed at that time that we're actually in the trend will be for the rest of this year, that we'll actually be ahead of where we were in 2019.
Fantastic.
And I remember, I think it was during our budget meeting, Bill, when you were there as the liaison, that, Chris, didn't you say that where we're at the 2019 levels, we've achieved that when a lot of our Xerox employees, they never came back to that
Correct.
campus. So to get back to those levels when you're devoid of those people is a nice, sign.
Yeah, I know I've said it, I think every year that since I've been here with the town is, and I was fortunate that I spent my first bunch of years in that same building as a Xerox person running programs for XRA. And the people that were participating in using the facility, once the XRA facility turned over and the town took over ownership, I think that carried over time. And then obviously it slowly started to dwindle, but then when COVID hit and people were gone, those people haven't come back. So the fact that we're able to be at 473 households or units billed now on a monthly installment billing, that number was almost seemed unattainable before, considering now that those really aren't Xerox employees.
Right.
Those are true residents and
Sure.
non-resident, but mostly residents. So it's testament to, to Jay and the programs and the things that he does, that he's bringing in the number of programs that we've offered. Even as last year when we, purchased the spin bikes. So being able to offer those new programs, it's a whole new clientele that's in that building.
Future economic development will help.
Well, and it's funny, because I was kind of hoping by now that we're a year out since Tessie bought 110 acres over there and 1.5 million square feet of buildings, and having met the Tessie management team and ownership back in October, very impressive. I was hoping by now that they'd have the plan for what they're going to do with those buildings. They don't, but they didn't buy them to just hang out. They're going to do something, and I would imagine it'll bring employees back to the campus.
Which is,
And,
which is perfect for us. So
You'll
once-
market to them.
Yeah, once those people are there, it just gives us a whole nother,
Well, their buildings, that's got to be about a 9 iron from the facility.
maybe a heavy 8, but yeah.
Well, I've seen you hit that's a wedge for you, Chris.
We still have a couple of Xerox employees that walk over daily and work
Yep.
out, so it's always been a topic of conversation, is reaching that group of Tessie employees, just as a relationship we had with Xerox.
Yeah,
Yep.
stay tuned.
I just mentioned, I just wrote a note here. Would we ever consider corporate memberships?
Sure.
I would say it's not off the table by any stretch, yeah. Same thing with programs or services, yeah.
Since we've got a couple large new players coming to town.
Yep.
I think it's great.
See when they get here.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
Chris and Katie, thanks.
Thank you.
And now, doing double duty tonight, both producing this and now going to come out from behind the door and present cable, is Karen Buck. And we're still ahead of schedule. It's 5:41. Nice.
Okay, this is short and sweet because I don't have much of a budget here in terms of lines. The major change is the third line down, the production assistant that was added last year. That has been removed. It's going to be going over to the new communications director line instead. So I will just be maintaining the part-time staff line, which is just 2 employees that it's more of a stipend because they only work a couple hours a week, helping here and there with television-related things. So that will stay. A slight increase in the equipment line. That's about it. And then in terms of promotion, we added a little bit extra in there as part of planning for an open house next year for the town, trying to get those back up and running. And then the last part is the website design and maintenance line. That is down, but still, because we did the redesign last year, the new fee will cover a partial payment every year for the next 5 years towards the next redesign, because I put us into a 5-year plan that locks in the price for the next 5 years, and then once 5 years is up, we automatically have paid down for the redesign. So we're now on a payment plan, which is a lot easier than trying to do it as a lump sum every couple of years. So that's it in terms of the budget.
And Karen, before, I got to say that I wish I would have looked at this closer, because when you went over the part-time employees, which is a stipend and it's flat from year to year, I see that changing. I know that, John, you're the liaison to cable now. Brayton is, I don't think, in the room anymore, but just in our discussions
He's
with
here.
you. He is? Is he behind the beam?
Yep.
Get out of here. Well, it's kind of evolving situation, but we are going over, we want to see if Karen is actually working 7 days a week and doesn't have any chance to take vacations and stuff. And within that, we're like, well, then we might need to take some of these part-timers and see if they can increase their part-time hours, especially during times to give Karen a break. So that's a possibility that's gonna go up, that line item, from 4,000 where it's at now to a number, and we'll keep with you, Paul, as this goes on. So is that essentially how you understand it, Brayton and John and
Absolutely.
Karen? and-
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
so, any questions beyond that, or comments?
No, I just have a brief statement. I just want to say thank you very much for these monitors. I can now see,
Yeah,
right, what we're talking about, whereas before I would have to look at the screen and could see nothing. And I think our audience is able to see these screens. So thank you so much for getting these in for us, Karen. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yes, I was going to thank you for the same thing and compliment you. I don't know how much you've shown of the actual board during this presentation, but to those who didn't know these screens were here, it probably looks a little weird that we're not squinting over at that screen, but it's right here in front of us, and it's fantastic.
Much better.
And also thanks for the website too, and every informational, with everything that's going on in the town. So,
I should also mention that on the screen, we have Cablevision fees, which I have being reduced by $50,000 year to year. These are fees we receive from Charter Communications. It's based on cable TV subscriptions. As people are unplugging. It's kind of been trending down. It's not dropped as quickly as I thought it might, but I felt I need to reduce it by at least 50,000 year to year, so.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up, because, geez, let me, where is my friend? Lauren Kelly. Sorry. Our rep for Charter, which is really Spectrum Cable, a couple weeks ago, I had reached out to her, and with Paul's help, we showed what the last 5-year trend is on these fees, and they're franchise fees. It's essentially a percentage of the Spectrum Cable bill that is tied to the town. And to give some perspective, in 2018, the town got $614,000 from that. And in 2022, we're down to $533,000. So over that 5 years, it's reduced by 13.5%. I'm not sure what it'll be for 2023.
Still trending down.
My question to our rep was like, because I understand how it's charged to the Spectrum bill, and anybody that has Spectrum Cable, your bill always goes up. So it could give a false sense that this is only reducing over 5 years at 13%. But my question was, well, how many cable subscribers have reduced over that period of time? Yeah, I know. I think it's more than 13%, but we don't have the answer. And the only reason I really want to get that information, or we should get it, is just so we're not caught where there's a huge drop of this. If we're budgeting around, $500,000 plus of these franchise fees, that's not an insignificant amount of money, and we're just trying to proactively get in front of it. And as of now, I don't have that information back from our rep of really what's the subscriptions for cable, and not internet. We don't get paid on internet connectivity. It's cable TV. That's how the franchise fees work. So I don't really want to know if somebody has Spectrum Internet and what they pay for that. We don't get paid franchise fees on that. We get it when they are Spectrum Cable TV subscribers. So we'll keep hitting on that, because $500,000 is nothing to sneeze at.
A lot of money.
Yeah. So, any questions on that?
Thanks, Karen.
Well, I think, and ahead of schedule, unless the board or anybody else has any questions or comments, I think that concludes the first budget workshop for 2024. Thanks.
That concludes it.